adjoining property value. The one on the right is the University of Rhode Island study, which was a study looking at population density, or at what point would a solar facility have an impact? In a rural area, in a suburban area, in an urban area like a downtown, where would you expect an impact? What they found is in rural and suburban areas, specifically outside of major cities and major populated areas such as Rhode Island and Massachusetts, there was no measurable impact to adjoining property values in those rural and suburban areas. You can go to the next slide, please. And another thing that gets brought up a lot when discussing property values is, well, what if I don't have any houses built on my property value? What about my land? I've got farmland right there. I don't want that impacted. And so the Georgia Institute of Technology actually did a study on that. They just decided, hey, we're gonna look at agricultural land and determine, does a solar facility have a positive, negative, or no impact on nearby agricultural land? What they found is that there is a small positive for being nearby a solar facility for agricultural land. Specifically, they note it's for land that adjoins the same transmission power lines and similar power line infrastructure. The idea being your land is worth what you can do with it, and if there's potential to utilize it for a solar facility, the land's value is enhanced because there is now another potential use. And the last study is the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. And this was a big study where they looked at a lot of data from many solar farms across many states. The overall conclusion of that was negative 1.5% to adjoining property values, which is within that typical market imperfection. And additionally, we note that they didn't consider the most important factor. As previously discussed, the appearance is the most important factor when determining whether or not the solar facility would have an impact. Within that study, they have compared solar facilities with no vegetative buffer to those with significant vegetative buffers, and not really made any adjustments or even considered that as a factor. And it's something the researchers themselves have noted as a deficiency in their study. And so lastly, what I'd like to do is briefly just touch on one match pair analysis that we've done here in Indiana. And this is in Henry and Rush counties. So just very briefly, this is a solar facility that was built last year, and there is a home that sold with a little dot on it there on the map. The solar panels are to the west, and I believe to the east as well. So it's right there, solar panels all around. It's 360 feet away from the nearest panel. And after comparing it to other similar nearby homes that sold, it shows a 7% positive for being adjacent to the solar facility. This is strong support for no impact to the adjoining property values for being next to a solar facility. And that concludes everything I have to say, and I'm happy to answer any questions when the time comes.
Thank you so much, Nick. I appreciate it. Okay. So I'm just going to briefly touch on this because you guys have already kind of heard a bit of this already, but briefly so that we can get to all your questions. So just in general, solar, there's lots of benefits that come from a solar project to the community. Us, Orion, we tend to try to be the best neighbor we possibly can and try to make sure that we're part of the community for the long term. Therefore, there's lots of benefits that we bring to try to support the community and the needs throughout the community, any local needs, and that's why we try to understand over a long period of time as we talk to people, talk to landowners, talk to lots of different stakeholders and understand those needs and try to help be part of the community and a good steward of the community. So with that said, as it's already been stated, these projects bring hundreds of millions of dollars in investment to the community and surrounding area. It's a clean, renewable energy source. There's pollinator-friendly plantings that are included within the project development. It brings in employment, construction jobs, part-time and full-time operational jobs, guaranteed long-term revenues for landowners, as well as the long-term stable tax revenues. In the first 25 years, the project typically pays millions in property taxes, which in Indiana typically means lower property taxes for the residents. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Justin to go over a couple of really commonly asked questions, and then we will open it up for you all to ask questions.
Excuse me. Good evening, y'all. Thank you. I'll try to keep it brief. I know people are probably itching to get their own questions answered. Thanks so much for sitting through this. Seems like most people are still awake, so we'll try to keep the energy level here. I will start by maybe addressing one or two questions, maybe just a couple of icebreakers to get things going. Commonly asked questions for developers. So one question that we hear a lot is, you or Ryan or said development company, you seem like nice people. How do we know you're going to be around here for the long term? Don't you just develop projects and sell them off and move on? And where does that leave us as a community? Which is a great question. I'll speak for ourselves at Orion. We do own projects, so we built the first wind project, the first renewable project in the state of Indiana in Benton County in 2008. We still own that project. We have developed other projects which we do not still own. There are certain markets and utilities where we will bring on a strategic partner if we think that partner can help get the project across the finish line. We may partner with, for example, a solar manufacturer because they have panels and they want to get those panels out there, and it gives us a competitive cost advantage. We may partner with a construction company because they build the most projects in the United States. Or we may ultimately sell the project to a utility because the utility says, this is my jurisdiction, this is my area, and I really want this project in our portfolio to rate base it. And that oftentimes is the best path forward for a project. However, this is all backstopped by contracts and agreements with our landowners, with the community, and with the utilities to whom we sell the power. Meaning that anyone that we partner with will be beholden to agreements that we make with our landowners, commitments we make to the county, and also these utility power purchase agreements, which Michael Kressner has alluded to. Now, does this go perfect 100% of the time? No. And I can give you a specific example where a mistake was made and it did not go according to plan. But I'll also say we learn from our mistakes too. So there is a recent article published by Reuters, I'm going to say in the last 6 months. And there is a landowner in our Dunn's Bridge project. His name is David Duttlinger. I'm good friends with David. I'm the one who signed him to the agreement. He and I still have a relationship and we maintain contact to this day. What happened with David is that, if you all are familiar with this project, it's in northern Indiana, in Jasper County, Indiana. There's a large coal plant owned by NIPSCO, which was set to retire. And we developed a large solar project in the footprint of that coal plant. And we brought on a strategic partner, a construction company, owner-operator NextEra, to construct the project. And NIPSCO, the utility, wanted to own this particular project. And so that was the path forward for that project. In our landowner agreements, we have a clause in there which says, prior to construction, the construction company will meet with the landowners to go over a site plan and discuss the layout with that landowner. The construction company did not do that. What happened was that, if you're familiar with the Kankakee Valley, essentially it was a swamp, and the swamp was drained. not like Washington, D.C., but there was a swamp there, which was drained. And you have pockets of rich alluvial soil, which is good ag land, and you have very sandy soil. And sometimes that's in the same field. And now David said to me, he said, look, we have a sand hill here. I want you to be careful of it. There's sand, and there's about 3-6 inches of topsoil on that. And if you scrape the topsoil off, it will blow. And because that construction meeting did not happen with David, the contractors went out there and they cut into the sand hill, and the sand started to blow. Now, we have built over 50 projects in the United States. We've built 8 or 9 projects, or developed 8 or 9 projects in the state of Indiana. Of that Dunn's Bridge project of which I speak, there were at least 30 landowners, and that project was about 4,000 acres. So just to put everything in context, this is one landowner of all the projects we've done in Indiana, of all the projects that we've done in the United States. This is one project. This was limited to about 5 acres within 4,000 acres. But it was a mistake, and it's inexcusable. And so what we do going forward is that if we work with a strategic partner, now we ensure that written into any contract that we have, with that strategic partner, we ensure that Orion is in the room during those construction consulting with the landowners and with any construction consulting. Same with any agreements that we make with the county and commitments we make there as well. And so, contractually, we have ourselves, covered to ensure that landowners are taken care of, and any commitments that we make to the county as well. So, yeah, that's one question. Yes, sir.
I read the Reuters article. I have nothing to do with Orion, one way or the other. I thought it was an accident, it was a hatchet job, and it was very biased towards solar. That's all I want to say on that. The other question I have is, what utility are you contracting with for the Saluda project? What utility is it going to be connected to?
Okay, good question. So the question by the gentleman here was, who are you eventually going to be selling the power to at this project? And the answer is, we don't quite have an answer for that yet. We have a couple of ideas for whom that might be. We are developing our specific project to integrate itself with the coal units in existence, both the AAP unit outside of town here, and potentially the LG&E unit across the river as well. So we'll be connecting to those lines. We don't have anything publicly announced. We're certainly working on outlets for it, but nothing public to announce right now. I will say though, to that end, I guess the next question maybe this gentleman is thinking is, well, why are you permitting now then? And it's a fair question, but utilities are very risk-averse entities, meaning they need a project to have as much risk taken away from it before they will commit to taking the energy from it, whether it's a utility, whether it's a commercial and industrial customer. And so first you have to sign the land, because if you don't have land, you don't have anything. Next you have to do your interconnection studies to make sure that you can connect to the grid adequately. And finally, you also need a permit, because if you can't get a local land use permit, then how can the project succeed? So the utility has to go in front of the state regulators, the Public Utility Commission. They certainly don't want to purchase energy from a project which isn't going to work out. So it's a it's a requirement of theirs, or I should say they strongly favor projects that are de-risked to the extent possible before they will even consider buying the energy from those projects. So hence the sequence of events here. We can open it up to other questions, statements. If you wanna, we'll send someone back to you.
Thank you.
Some of the meetings I've attended in the past, we has talked about the employment issue, and my understanding was long-term, you've said there's going to be 1 or 2 positions. The main employment you're bringing to the county is the construction. But if I'm not mistaken, you just said you bring in your own construction people. So how does that affect the employment in Jefferson County?
I think the comment, okay, so the question was regarding jobs, temporary jobs versus permanent jobs, and how that affects Jefferson County. Do I have that right? And who those people are. So let me back up first. So there are, yes, temporary jobs that are associated with construction, and then there are permanent jobs associated with the project. I would say that for a project of, a utility scale, that's generally about 200 to 300 workers. Generally, those workers are pulled locally first, to the extent that they can handle the work. That's contractors, that's dirt movers first, that's electricians, and so oftentimes there's a job fair, and locals are allowed to apply for those types of jobs. Now you may say they're temporary jobs, but I made the mistake of telling that to one of the construction workers, and he said, "Don't call my job temporary, because it puts food on my table for my kids." And yes, it may be temporary here, but it keeps me going, and I go on down the road to the next project. So those jobs to them are actually permanent jobs, and they keep their family going. And to the extent possible, we do try to hire those locally. The second is the permanent jobs, and so there are not a lot of permanent jobs associated. Solar does not bring a lot of permanent jobs, and depending on how you look at it, it's good or bad. One nice thing about it is that, as we alluded to, there's not a lot of traffic on the site. Solar sites are relatively traffic free, not a lot of cars coming and going. We're not adding additional stress or infrastructure to the school systems to have to apply, to make the schools bigger, to have more kids coming in for all the workers. But we do hire people to do primarily vegetation management for the project, and also local electricians, maintenance workers to work on the project. That's generally, on the order of 4 to 6 permanent jobs. Those are what I would consider, well-paying jobs for those types of tradespeople. I will say that when you talk about jobs, you have to look a little bit broader out and what's going on in the state of Indiana now. And certainly we know, Indiana, where it's been in terms of the forefront of steel and manufacturing in the US, how that has changed over the years. But I would actually argue that some of that is starting to come back. And solar is actually starting to drive some of that too. So you look at down in Clark County, for example, Canadian Solar is considering building a manufacturing plant there to hire 300-400 workers. A battery plant is just completing up near Albion in Indiana, outside of Fort Wayne. That will also employ people. There's data centers that are coming in too, which are asking for renewable energy. Those also are employing people too, both on the construction side and the permanent side. And I get it, maybe some of these things you like, maybe some of these things you don't like. But I grew up in a small town. I don't live there anymore because there were no jobs for us to stick around. And so a lot of us have left the community, excuse me, and it's a little heartbreaking. But I think we are, if you look around, more jobs are being created, not only through the solar project, but also industry-wide as well, which, I'm hopeful will allow, people to stay a little bit more local, not have to go off so far to look for jobs.
Yeah, he don't have anything to say.
Next question.
This is a joke.
The question was, do the panels break down very often? Do you have to have maintenance? Yes, we definitely have to have maintenance. No, they don't break down. They're super, they're about as simple as you can get for something that produces electricity. Yes, sometimes you have a short, sometimes something goes out, but generally we monitor that 24/7. When something's not producing, it's not making money, so we'll go out there and swap out the panel. But generally speaking, the panels are designed to last 35, 40 years, and they're pretty inert. Sorry? Right, so he asked if the panels need any sort of tuning up or like an annual maintenance performing. So we do at specific intervals go through and we'll examine kind of the health of the whole system, and if we see something that needs to be adjusted, we'll make the adjustments at that. So I would say that we're constantly monitoring it, but by and large, it's not as easy of a job as like a Maytag repairman as the commercials used to joke, but generally there's not a lot of big maintenance that goes on with the project. The question was, do we use good quality parts and service? The answer is yes. We use what's called the tier 1 or the highest tier, and let me just say that we sell power under obligations to utilities or counterparties. We're required to produce a certain amount of energy per the contract with those utilities. And so if we're not producing, we're in violation of those. And so we're highly motivated to keep these projects operational for the life of the project. Another question you all aren't asking, I'm just gonna take it head on, is again, you and Ryan talk a good game, or not, but we've got these panels out here, and I know that this community is particularly sensitive to this issue because they've seen it before. And the issue I'm talking about is Marble Hill. And so there we had an energy project that was contemplated to be built, and construction started on it, and we all know how that ended. And so the question is then on us, what happens, if Orion goes bankrupt and you're not around here? This is a question we have to answer to our landowners all the time. Are we going to get stuck? They say it a lot nicer than this, but essentially what they're saying is, are we going to get stuck with a lot of junk on our property and you're not around to take care of it, right? And so we have certain safety nets built in, both for the landowners and for the county, to ensure that this won't happen. And so the first safety net, and probably the most important one, is this concept of financial security. And so prior to the start of construction, we are going to put up a letter of credit, a financial security, and that will be in the county's name, so the county can draw upon it if needed. So if something happens to Orion or the project and it goes defunct, it's not operating anymore, outside of a whole bankruptcy process, the county will be able to call upon this bond, this irrevocable letter of credit, to ensure that there is money to clean up and restore the land to get it back into condition where it can be farmable again. And so we, Orion, just with our project, the county has a requirement for this, which phases in the security over time. In our application, we're actually going one step further and saying, we're gonna put that up at the start of construction, just in case, something happens in construction, that money will also be there to ensure that that money is cleaned up and restored and set aside there.
Sherry Chabo. You said that the irrevocable letter of credit would be named to the county. What about the landowners? What if it's their land and how is that the county's responsibility if it's their land? I'm trying to understand.
Yes, thank you. That's a